What were you saying about wholesome?
I feel like I look a bit wholesome today, don't I? Do I look nurturing and like poncho-esque, warm, motherly?
Yeah, motherly is the word.
Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of That's a Fact.
Always be yourself, no matter what.
Love by intuition and experience. You are liberated in the freedom of your pleasure and your
And I design joy, and that's a fact.
and that's a fact.
And that's a fact.
Welcome to another episode of That's a Fact. I'm your host, Kirsty Adams, and I'm sitting here today with the amazing Pilani Bubu. How are you doing, girl?
I'm doing well, actually. I'm feeling fresh and happy and joyful here and there.
It's really an honor to have you on the show
Yeah.
because you've accomplished musical goals that people want to accomplish. You've accomplished talk show goals that people want to accomplish. I feel like I'm a bit of an amateur sitting here interviewing
Oh,
you,
come
right?
on.
And then, of course, there's also other business ventures that you've dabbled into. Can you tell us about everything that you've accomplished, or the most highlight parts of your career at this point?
Sure. I trace back my highlights over 10 years because I think what I was doing prior to that was going to school and studying and doing the usual to get to a place, to be employable and all kinds of things, but not really living true to my purpose and designing my life. And I think 10 years ago I took on the task to actually live my life by design. And that design was to always pursue the highest form of energy, which is your passion and creative. And your passion will always derive the best creative energy. And with that, I've had the energy to do all these things that you've now mentioned. So 10 years ago, I quit my corporate job to pursue a solo music career and just kind of to honor my first love. And so I've kind of released 4 projects since then. As a singer, songwriter, and storyteller. The first one was titled Journey of a Heart, and it spoke of the heartbreak that caused me to come out and to express myself more. And so that was coming out of love. It kind of cracked me open and allowed me to be vulnerable enough to admit certain honesties to myself.
Absolutely.
The second project was titled Warrior of Light, and that project really expresses the kind of light and lightness that I felt, and I wanted to encourage other people to pursue their own passions similarly to mine, and mine were around music and singing a lot about the love I was now experiencing, a different kind of love. It was about heaven here on earth. It was about a sense of freedom that I had now adorned myself with and was experiencing as I traveled and shared my music and just kind of finding my promised land. And then my third project was titled Folklore Chapter 1, which is an identity piece, looking back into my origin and my roots and seeing how the world saw me as an African woman moving through the world, and sharing of myself and sharing my music. And I realized I had such gem and treasure of where I was from in terms of the music, the writing styles, the culture, the storytelling. And so I started dabbling into that kind of African storytelling and writing from certain musical styles of my people, the call and response to the rhythmic vocals to using the language in a way and really exploring its intelligence. And so that project, Folklore Chapter 1, and that's kind of been a really big highlight for me because somehow I kind of came into more of my way as a storyteller, seeping in some spoken word and some poetry, making sure the story is very cohesive, even from like my other loves, fashion, visual storytelling.
As we can see here, Exhibit A.
And so there I really tried to harness, even with my merch and the illustrations of the project, harness a lot of the work, multidisciplinary facets of that storytelling. And yeah, so that project, which is a career highlight, won a South African Music Award in 2020 for Best African Adult Contemporary Album. I don't know what the adult means grown-up music or something. A contemporary fusion of folk music, in a sense. And I'm currently releasing, what number is this? 4. I'm currently releasing a Lockdown Lovestory. It's an EP because the love story was very short. I didn't feel to embellish, but it is a solid body of work that tells a story from beginning, middle, and end of a relationship that happened during lockdown. And that relationship had its, kind of waves and moods.
Yeah.
A very moody project that starts with love and dreaminess and desire to being highly strung up on someone, to having that dance between whether to end a relationship or not, to
We have
officially
to talk
ending
about
it.
this at a later stage in this conversation,
Yeah.
because this is basically the focal point of the conversation.
Yeah.
How the gestation of a relationship happens and why on earth it ends. You know, after all that.
A whole gestation.
Right? A
Yeah,
whole
we can talk
gestation.
about that. Yeah, we can explore that.
Yeah, you mentioned something about the promised land. I really, really love that little, statement that you made about yourself. Because as you sit here, Pilani, you are looking, as you said, wholesome,
Awesome.
centered. What do you do to achieve that in yourself?
So it's so funny because she called me in the morning and I had barely opened my eyes, but it's a habit, like I'll start my first few texts because other people are waiting for it. But yeah, there are a few rituals or self-owned rituals that are important for me as a person. There are a number of things that I had to try and harness when beginning a career in the creative arts. And a lot of it has to do with like what you need to do the self-work and to be at your highest or your best. And I do a lot of sort of meditation and contemplation. So in the mornings, I generally like take my own slow brew. It's different from corporate culture where you're waking up and you're chasing the day.
Let's zone in on the slow brew. I like this terminology.
Yeah,
that you just,
well,
springing on us.
sometimes people are provoked by the day and they are asked it, and so they react instead of actually being the proactive ones. When I wake up, I know like how I am in charge and prioritizing the day for what I need to get done to the balance of what is being asked of me. So when I wake up, it's a slow brew. Like I get my hot water and lemon, and then I do 20 minutes TM, transcendental meditation. And then my thoughts start to align in my head, and then I have to prioritize them. That's when I start having my coffee, so that when the coffee kicks in, like I'm ready to start with the first task. And actually I write better and think better in the morning, so I prioritize that time as me time. I don't take meetings before 10, and I try my hardest not to, unless like there's a big project and then I'm earning a hell of a lot of money. I'll be like, okay, fine, we can have a meeting at 8 in the morning. But other than that, I definitely like take my own pace about my life. I follow my intuition a lot. I really learn to tune in to like what my heart says and how my energy is feeling and what I need. And so I make decisions against that. Sometimes they'll look spontaneous to other people, but I've been seeing them in my head and in my vision for a long time. Like when I see something, I know that I've seen this before somehow in my vision, and so this intersection is right. And
Would you say that visualization is a strong part of transcendental meditation?
Sure, transcendental meditation is more focused on making sure that you heal, like your mind and your body. So it's actually biological fact that when you meditate, you have better sleep. It's a better rest than sleep, sorry. And so to clear your mind and to cleanse your mind is to get rid of all that rusty stuff. It does create better clarity. And I do believe that when you're working from that place, you definitely will visualize better and know better and feel like better. And then you align with that feeling, how it feels for you, what it should look like, you know what I mean? And I really am more focused these days about how things feel rather than how they look, in a sense. Like I've been asking myself, what does success look like? You know, and it can look like so many things that actually may not feel very good. So for me, success feels like a certain lightness. It feels like when you're supported, when you feel like the job is being done and it's no longer just on your hands, you know what I mean? And there's more and more and more. So that feels good, you know.
And also being able to be present with yourself.
Yeah.
Because in this life and in this generation that we live in right now, it's so easy to get distracted from yourself. So that's amazing that you centering yourself like that in the morning.
Yeah. Besides my morning rituals, I also make it an active task to travel the world, see new things, explore novelty. And sometimes novelty may not be that new. You come to realize that things are more of the same, but you got to stay inspired and you have to stay fueled in a way. So I definitely fuel myself with a lot of travel. I do read a lot as well. I don't do a lot of media, like I don't watch television and stuff. I know it's so bad. I don't even watch my own TV show. But I like to think of myself as like a creative.
There's a reason for that though.
I'm a creator, not a consumer in the creative space. And when you waste time sometimes consuming a lot of what you create isn't as organic and as authentic as it can be.
True.
So I like to filter out, some of the where I draw inspiration. It's easier to curate it. I'll definitely watch Netflix and I'll watch RuPaul's Drag Race and all kinds of other things.
Shout out to RuPaul.
Yeah, that's like, that show is so inspiring for me.
It
gives
is
me
very
so much energy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So this conversation is going to be centered around your latest project called Lockdown
Lovestory.
Yo. This is a tongue twister for me, by the way.
Loved up.
Just the many voice notes that I've sent to Pilani, I swear I have messed that up several times.
You're not the only one.
Lockdown Lovestory. Here we go. Okay, so first of all, what is the plot? What is the plot on this Lockdown Lovestory?
So, March 2020, the world comes to a standstill and we're all summoned into a quarantine, state of emergency. And our only task at that time was flatten the curve. And so we all thought, well, if there are like 14 people who just arrived from China, whom we can trace, who have this thing, they'll get over it within 2 weeks. And then the curve will be flattened and we'll all resume our lives. And this virus will pass us by, like many other viruses have passed us by. Ebola never came down here. Zika virus never came down here. Do you know what I mean? We all think that we'll escape this thing. And so somewhere in the middle of that, maybe new things had started in our lives. And for me, there was a relationship that kind of started virtually. And me and this person were at a distance, and we'd promised that we would meet up and have coffee next time I'm in their city. And so it began, but then that wasn't happening. So maybe like 3 weeks later, we're like, whoa, okay, so we're not going to get a chance to like do this meet thing. So let's begin chatting online. So we began chatting online, and it kind of brewed and cooked itself and baked itself into something really wonderful. Like they were like mind, and we fell in love, essentially. I mean, we got to the I love yous. I love you.
The aw sound.
To the point where we were talking almost every single day, if not every single day. They would send me good mornings and good nights and video call me in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And, we connected quite heavily. But
all
it was
all those little necessary little things that you need for a relationship.
right, love bombing, sometimes they call it, depending on how it ends. So
Be
all
warned.
of that. Yeah, so all of that, like till about, it was very short-lived, till about August that same year. So actually that month, or that, like the day after I won my South African Music Award, he kind of disappeared and ghosted me in some way. And there wasn't much said, and I don't know if there was like an assumption of what I could figure out could be the issue, but this is something we should talk about. Like when men don't communicate and they assume that we've had the conversation, or maybe the other nuances around lockdown that happened. Maybe they're already in a relationship, and because everything was closed down, I was a piece of entertainment, and it could only last for so long, or it could only be intriguing for so long, and maybe it was just infatuation, and maybe the waiting time was too long. So basically the whole story is we meet, we keep this relationship virtual, and then I think we come down to a certain level, you explore certain things after that, and then it ends. And I like to call the project Lockdown Lovestory because I think there were other people who may have been driven to be in relationships or out of relationships where they're lonely or maybe suffocated. People who maybe fell in love with themselves. I think it's an open conversation, and I've just opened the portal for people to have that conversation so we can close that chapter.
That's amazing. Thank you for presenting that platform out of your own experience with this matter. And that's indeed true. There's a lot of people that have had to deal with the concept of love during this time, whether it was with themselves or with someone else. So let's talk about this word communication, because I think as a FemmRoom that likes to talk about or embrace the feminine, we need to explore this aspect of the uncommunicative male, or because it is quite a popular, or let's rather say a trending concept that needs to be dismantled, it needs to be deconstructed. So let's deconstruct. So first of all, when it comes to feminine communication, what do you think that feminine communication is about? And let's start with the what it's about.
Yeah, I do find that feminine communication is far more forthright. I think we are far more open to exploring and expressing our feelings, even if they shift and move. And I feel like we are all aligned with that emotions and moods change. And I think because we have to experience a lot of our moods and our hormonal switches and changes because we have a period. And we learn that at different times I can be at a certain place and I can tell someone about it, but I won't always stay in that station. And I worry that maybe with men, when it comes to their communication, it's kind of like a standstill. It's like, if it's like this, then it's like this. And quite often it's difficult for them to express themselves, even if it's shifting. Because I think we are all allowed to be in a particular station, express ourselves and move on. So communication in the feminine for me is always quite often raw and more vulnerable. I do find that when a man has to express their feelings, they'd rather not. It's almost as if they make decisions without consultation. And women, we make decisions after we've consulted a number of times. So our communication tends to be ongoing. Hi, feeling I didn't like this, but I'm expecting that a shift will happen and maybe you'll do things differently and then we'll carry on. So to us, we journey with emotions. And I think with men, and I think it also comes from a very patriarchal society where they like to know it or not, they are, as a leader, because they're leading and they can make decisions, and the whole nuance of like women waiting for men to come to them and ask them out, women waiting for men to ask them to marry them, we are put in a position, our decision is not to make the decision. And I think this is where ghosting and being blue-ticked and being, you know what I mean, where you're broken up without communication comes from, because the person on the other side, the male counterpart, if this is a male-female relationship, or anyone who embodies the masculine in the relationship, because they, them could also, you know, be more feminine in their pursuit. Masculine in their pursuit. There are underlying tones where it's as if bullishly they lead because they are the leaders. They choose. They are men. So I'm not discussing this with you because I've made a decision. So quite often I think we as women don't realize that we find ourselves in a space where someone is bullying and leading the conversation in the relationship with non-verbal communication, and they make decisions and finalize, and we don't even know how we got there because they had the whole conversation in their heads. And you know what I mean? Whilst we journey with our emotions, we journey through that conversation, so that when you find me 10 steps from now, I've said this to you over and over again. This is how you make me feel. I don't like it when we this, or you know what I mean? This makes me happy. I would love more of that. Whereas with men, potentially, or in the masculine side, there is maybe a sense of bullyish leadership that has an entire internal conversation with themselves.
Let's talk about I sense a bit of entitlement here. But I would imagine, and having been in relationships myself, that there's a different idea as to who has entitlement. Because on the one hand, the man, okay, we're talking about heterosexual relationships now.
Yeah, let's frame that up.
Let's put that up there. So, I find that with the man, there is a sense that the woman has an entitlement to their time. But on the woman's side, a man has an entitlement of, as you say, leading. So in your opinion, who is the one that really has the most entitlement? And we're talking now in a patriarchal sense, in a societal sense now.
Well, I do think that men have more entitlement in a heterosexual relationship. And even if the entitlement comes with a sense of omission, even if the entitlement comes with like limited participation or showing up for them, they're still entitled to create space and that negative space for themselves. And not negative as in like bad. Negative space is just a void or a gap. And I think men decide like how much do we pour into the space. The moment we come across as too much or wanting too much too quickly, or let's do this and fill up the space, they're also entitled to cut it back because they just reject it. Have you ever tried to plan a holiday with a man? If he hasn't made the decision that he's doing it, I've heard the story so many times. It's actually so funny, where you've planned a whole trip, a woman's planned a whole trip. I mean, this should be exciting. But men get upset when a woman plans their lives and they're producing the relationship. They feel like you have made decisions about their time, and you know what I mean, they're not leading, so they have to reject this idea.
Of course.
And also, you know, so I'm saying if they want to create a particular negative space, which is to do nothing at all, that's also an entitlement. So sometimes you can mistake that with just they're just not that person, or they're not romantic, or whatever. But they've made a decision calculatingly that they don't want to create anything within that space, so give them space.
Yes.
So they bully the give me space, they bully the when they need you, and if you're too much, you got to pull it back, because it's about how it feels to them, and I think they're the most entitled.
Wow. Do you feel that they contradict themselves a lot when in the sense of organization and feeling like some external party is organizing their lives for them? Because in previous instances I've witnessed, I've been in, but I've also, you know, heard from other people that, you know, there is this gesture of, please help me organize my life. But then when you do, then it's a problem.
If it becomes too controlling, if they feel controlled, then it may become a problem. But that also comes from a system and a construct they may not be aware that they're participating in. So in the patriarchal system, if the man chooses a wife, they choose a wife or a woman in their lives for certain reasons that are embedded in their thinking. That is to help them facilitate raising a family, creating a family, and also supporting their vision and their career.
Indeed.
And these are these underlying things that men expect, to the point where women should be sacrificing against that vision and that agenda.
Yeah.
And so there is this thing that they will want, which is to organize their life, whether it's to do their laundry and to keep the house like functionable enough for them to go out there and thrive. They then potentially could reject it when it goes too far, because to some level they want it on a subliminal level. But if it becomes too controlling, and then it feels like your leadership is extremely exposed now in the sense, then you got to cut it back. So it is a balance and a battle between two, how far a woman leads in doing that and creating a vision for their lives, and you know, when they say that is or happens.
Wow. And this is obviously a problem now. With your letters, so earlier you spoke to me about letters and how you compose letters within the songs that you have written around this type of topic. How do you address this within your songs?
So mad. The letter writing came up with the concept of the Lockdown Lovestory experiences that we wanted to have, because we wanted people to be honest about like who they'd want to address, whether it's themselves. A love letter to yourself, a love letter to someone else. But in my music, and in Lockdown Lovestory, and the review and the listening sessions have been just a level of sort of honesty. I wrote it as, you know, direct messagery to the person. Like the song Miss the Mark, I'm speaking to them. You and I, we missed the mark. We're shooting blanks in the dark. I wish we'd shot it out the park. I still think about you and I, and all the things I wish we'd done, and all the things I wish we never did. Then this would be a different day. I wouldn't be asking you to stay, you know. And so casually. I think that it's just opening up that portal for conversation within the Lockdown Lovestory, and somehow in all of the shows that we've done and spaces that I've been, everyone feels like they can tell the story for me because they have experienced this exact story. And it's not a complex story. When you start a relationship, it swings you very high, and then it ends badly. From my side, being ghosted, which we don't talk about, because somehow when you are either what people think is a beautiful woman, nobody imagines you rejected. Nobody wants to talk about like how it makes them feel and how raw a feeling it is. And really the level of disrespect that we feel when people don't honor us with a response. And for me, I'd go as far as saying, like, there are friends, like also female friends who struggle with communication and mental health issues, that feel like some conversations don't have to be had, and they leave you like high and dry without communicating, which is equally the same as ghosting someone. They'll read your message, blue tick you, but not honor you with a response, and you find it disrespectful because I think it's rude, right? And so just kind of looking at all of these songs and looking at Lockdown Lovestory as an opportunity for us to explore the literature or explore like what we would like to say is what we're doing in our love story experiences, which we want to do more and more. I mean, we just create certain rooms. We also invite a poet in to write for people if they wish. It's just high expression, vulnerability, where people are at, learning how to do that. And I think that that's a way of healing going out of this pandemic. So post-lockdown, I know the word lockdown has a lot of trauma, and I know when I put it in the title of a project, Lockdown Lovestory, you think it has a sell-by date. It's like, soon it'll be over.
Yeah, but we need to debrief about this type of thing, you know? Because we have overcome it. I think the world is coming to a place where it knows more about this trauma that was suddenly sprung onto us.
Yeah.
Now we've got the time and the space and the knowledge to debrief about it.
Debrief.
Good on you for that.
And decompress. I always say, like, all these R's, right? For me, it's all about reflection. It's all about redemption. I think there has to be something redeemed. This is what we're all trying to make up for. You see all of us coming out, putting on shows, restaurants trying to make sure that they thrive, new spaces trying to recover their
100%.
monies. So we need to redeem, and we also need to restore. And the only way we can do that, I believe, and a lot of my like Lockdown Lovestory tour is about these reunions and getting people back into the habit of coming out into a space. Yes, wear your masks and be safe, but let's come out, let's create these reunions. You know, some people are still scared and inward. You know, they are in a form of inertia about like what is needed from them. And in the creative community, we need people to come out, to have reunions with their friends, invite people out and share in the work, because that's how we will restore and redeem and stuff. So let's come together.
And also Yes, indeed. Sorry, we were also built to be in communion with one another. So
Communion, one of my favorite words.
So being in the space together helps us not only restore, you know,
what has been lost,
society or what has been lost, but also helps us restore ourselves, because we need to be around people. And that's exactly why we need relationships and why we're talking about this in the first place. Pilani, you released a song, it's one of my favorites, Pendulum Swing.
I like Pendulum Swing.
I like it a lot. And I can sense that it has a lot to do with our swinging emotions, and how that has to be managed not only within ourselves but in the face of other people. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and this topic, in relation to this topic of, you know, being able to be communicative in relationships?
Sure. Pendulum Swing describes the conundrum that it addresses the conundrum of how things swing and move, and not just when they swing, how fast they swing. The higher and faster something swings, the higher, fast it will drop, because that's what the pendulum does, right? And it does this and it does this and it does this, and it drops you. And for me, it's about a particular cadence and a particular steadiness that we as lovers and as people need to adopt, you know. So the song goes, high swings the pendulum, that's the conundrum. You know, you left me on a swing, was this a lonely fling? Like puppeteers, our own ideas, were we, you know, wiping our own tears? You left me on a swing, like engineers without gears, addressing our own fears. And I really feel like there was...
I feel like that's a poetry slam right there.
And the verse is like, adrenaline rush, a lonely push, tell me it wasn't Afghan Kush, which is weed and smoked. The person in the story knows themselves. You know, tell me it wasn't Afghan Kush, we're dangling high upon a swing, hanging tightly on a string. You came into my life in such a rush, asking for things you couldn't fulfill just so you can pull the strings. And sometimes we come into each other's lives.
Just by the way, that's the control factor right there. Right?
Control, like, yes, the puppeting,
pulling the strings.
Yeah. And sometimes people need certain things at a particular time, whether they're lonely, they need company, or they're intermittently between something else. And it comes from fear and not love at times, when you are pursuing things from that place. And quite often, you know, it's like all very engineered relationships and love. And so Pendulum Swing talks to the idea that potentially we came into this, if we reviewed our reasons coming in and our intentions and what the triggers were, what was driving it. And during lockdown, what was driving on a lot of it is like fear, or it was like, oh, the world's coming to an end, so I do need to love, or I need to, I've spent this time alone, let me start finding my family. So you fall even harder and you want it to work. I call it like post-quarantine euphoria, where you met someone and you all felt like you need to be getting married tomorrow. And having children tomorrow, because wow, let's build our own community. I would never want to go through this again without loved ones. You feel it. It was like a euphoric state, but it was also still driven by the same trigger, loneliness and fear. And Pendulum Swing, you said it's like these moods and emotions, and yes, it's kind of like being so high on something that it's disorientating at the same time. But if you revisit where it started from and reconfigure the cadence and the speed of something, you'll realize its haste was coming from like fear or something else, And so,
I think with anyone that has this deeply ingrained anxiety, there is the sense of getting things done immediately, to the point where you are idolizing that necessity, right? And there's just imbalance going on. And I think what you're addressing here is, why this pendulum swinging both ways, and we need to manage either side, right?
Absolutely.
That's why a pendulum swings. That's why we have these emotions.
And then it develops the clock, and the clock ticks as well. A clock has a pendulum, and that clock, has to go by 60 minutes to the hour. 100%. That is like the most balanced kind of cadence and move.
And everything is relevant, right?
And relative to it's relative to where we are, is what I will say. And I think being more and more in tune of where we are. And it's okay, like I feel like these lockdown little relationships, man, they were a mark of the times. Whatever happened, and we're all laughing about it right now, was because it was like indicative and a mark of that time. So the relativity of it is just like, where are you? How are you feeling? Are you broody? Are you this? Are you that? And we have to forgive ourselves for where we are in context, you know what I mean? So whether we were feeling like fearful the world's going to come to an end and we need to be loved, we only have that sense somewhere, somehow, when we are in particular stations of our lives. So it's definitely, like relative.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, just by the way, this beautiful melody that came out of Pilani's voice was Pendulum Swing, and you can find that on any digital platform. And please go take a listen. It's really amazing. It's really soothing and it's cathartic. You're going to do yourself a huge favor. Girl, we're going to wrap this up because there's definitely more to be said about this.
Yeah, and more that we'll talk about.
But everyone needs to go and digest what has been said right now so that they can have all their thoughts drawn up for the next conversation.
Right.
I'm very excited. Thank you, Pilani.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for coming out in the morning,
post
10 a.m.
So Pilani, we like to end off every conversation with an affirmation. Given what we've spoken about today, what is your affirmation?
Well, the one that's been ringing in my head, and I don't know if it like qualifies as an affirmation, but it definitely drives like my level of like persistence and commitment and ambition and forgiveness and kindness to my journey, is that it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And so whilst you're thinking that lots of things should shift and move as they do and how quickly you think they should, everything takes time, and it will feel like it was simply overnight when it happens. But give yourself the kindness and the compassion to know that if you continue every day for long enough, something will give and something will break. So it takes 10 years to become an overnight success.
Wow, and that's a fact.
Thanks, Kirsty.
Don't you know